Praised be Jesus and Mary.
Now and forever.
November the 29th is the feast of all saints of the Seraphic Order, because on this date, November the 29th of 1223, the Pope approved the rule of Saint Francis. And this rule is the path that leads Franciscans to holiness. So all the saints in the Franciscan Order throughout history have become saints by being faithful and observant of this rule of theirs, the rule of Saint Francis. And Blessed Gabriele Allegra is a recent example of Franciscan holiness. He died in 1976. He was a missionary in China, and his major accomplishment was, of course, his holiness, but then amongst the other major accomplishments of his life was the fact that he translated the Bible from the original languages into Chinese. This saint, Blessed Gabriel, loved his vocation to the Franciscan Order, and he would say over and over again that even if I was born 1,000 different times, I'd choose to become a Franciscan. I'd follow this vocation. I just love it so much. And some Franciscan saints tend to be very expressive of their love for their vocation. St. Pio of Pietrelcina, Padre Pio, for example, would sometimes thinking of the great gift that he had received by being called to the Franciscan Order, he'd start crying, kiss his habit, and say that he was unworthy of such a vocation. And at the time of another saint, St. Charles of Sezze, an obscure Franciscan saint, but an amazing one, at his time it was not uncommon for brothers, for Franciscans, to show appreciation for their vocation by taking off their habit as a penance and then presenting themselves with it to their superior and begging again. I'm so unworthy, I beg you again, can I put this back on? I just realized what my unworthiness, and I ask again for this grace to be able to put this habit back on myself. It's a beautiful vocation. That's my point here, and the saints illustrate that. And it's open actually to everyone, because St. Francis opened the path to holiness to friars, nuns, and laity alike. There's the third order as well. So the Franciscan spirituality of our Seraphic Patriarch is open to everybody. And the third order of St. Francis has been particularly praised and encouraged by the popes, especially in recent history. Leo XIII and Pius XI exhorted all the faithful to become Franciscans for their own sanctification, precisely because sharing in the rule of St. Francis, they share in that path to holiness, but for the good of the church as well. The popes have called the Franciscan tertiaries the new Maccabees, so the new fighters in the people of God, a protection, a bulwark against especially the errors of today, so communism, and the errors of Russia. So it's Franciscans, tertiaries, especially the ones in the world, lay Franciscans, that are supposed to be the defenses, the front lines of the church against the errors of Russia. And there are many ways many reasons for which the popes encourage the laity to become Franciscans. I'll share with you 4. So first, becoming a Franciscan makes sense, and it's advisable because you have a definitive and clear rule of life to follow. There's a rule for friars, for nuns, and for the laity. So there's a clear, definitive rule of life, time-tested and approved by the church. This rule has produced saints, and it continues to do so. It eliminates all groping in the dark for a spirituality, for a path, for a way to God. It's an assurance of observing the commandments, the evangelical counsels, all the virtues. It leads to holiness. All you have to do is follow it. It's all pre-written. It's people before you have come up with it, have walked this path, and all you have to do is follow. Next, there are countless models and intercessors who have achieved sanctity by the observance of the same rules. So you have saints that have done this before you. Their example encourages you and instructs you as well. Next, the example and the support of living brothers and sisters in the same kind of life. So there's that community structure, which is so important for us. And within a community structure, St. Maximilian would say, a noble rivalry and an accountability and a support. It's a family. And lastly, an official consecration to God, recognized by the Church, which bestows a special merit on all the actions of a tertiary, a guarantee that all those actions in accord with the rule lead to holiness, and a special merit, an added merit in the eyes of God. So much so that we're reminded of, so the tertiary should always remember the great promise. When a tertiary makes his profession of the Franciscan way of life, the Church responds with a promise through the mouth of the priest. And every tertiary should remember this. The great promise made to him in the name of God on the day of his profession. And I, on the part of God, if you observe these things, promise you life everlasting. It's a pretty amazing promise. I think that's probably the most convincing argument for why to become a Franciscan. And I personally, in my humble opinion, agree with the popes. Everybody should become a Franciscan. Praised be Jesus and Mary, now and forever.